Damn it.
It was all he could manage to squeeze out as he backed away.
Do you say?
I looked closer. There was a human face sticking out of the sand, as if someone had fallen in up to his neck. The face was pale gray like stone, but the eyes were suddenly open. Even I, who was used to the creepy stuff, was sickened by the sight. Elaine stared at the face, and the ghost ring burned like a glowing coal. So it's definitely a manifestation of the dead. I thought he just bounced right off. But Elaine suddenly said in a husky voice,
Brother, it's you.
And he, even more faded, stepped toward that face and began frantically digging up sand with his hands. Dust flew up in all directions. Brain and I looked at each other, not knowing what to do. He was not sure whether to rush to help or stay away from the damn relatives from under the ground. But he stopped digging quickly, because his brother's face was actually a talking mass.
Why? How did you get here?
Alan sobbed. The face answered in a husky, muffled voice.
Don't you remember? You sent me here, or rather you killed me with your own hands.
I almost choked. The twitching look on Elaine's face told me that he'd freaked out, too. It was a memory he'd been suppressing for a long time, but the local land made it hard to hide sins.
I didn't do that. I mean...
He gasped, then closed his eyes, bitterness rising to his throat.
I really was envious. You were always ahead of me in the magical arts. My parents praised you, admired you.
But his brother wouldn't let him finish.
You could have been my friend, but you became my executioner. And so I lie here now and remember it was your hand that put the dagger in my back.
Alan sobbed. The mask lay on the sand, and the ghost himself looked at him once more.
Let that be a lesson to you.
Elaine roared, not with rage, but as if with terror and remorse, grabbed his face and began to cover it back up with sand, burying it frantically like a dog trying to rake a bone. The brother didn't resist, only stared blankly until layer after layer covered him. A black shimmer slipped through the air, seemed to be a remnant of the same malevolent energy that made the body spring from the ground. Having won a nasty victory, Elaine stood up. We moved closer, awkwardly silent.
Let's go.
He wheezed with whitened lips.
There's too many dead people with claims.
We did not argue. While he was in shock, I glimpsed the spot where the mask of my traveler's brother's face lay. I noticed a movement at the edge of my field of vision. I turned around and saw a creature in a red robe. It wasn't just a creature. It was huge like a statue and had 3 faces at once. Or even more. There were more distorted faces in his chest, beneath the fabric of his robe. My hair stirred, and my heart pounded like it was going to fly out of my chest. The creature bent down, leisurely stuck its hand into the sand and pulled out the very mask, and stared at us for a moment. Its eyes were vacant, exactly like those of the statues. Something cold and understanding lurked in that gaze. It was as if it were looking at us, assessing whether to consume our souls or leave them for later. Hey, look, I whispered, making a sign to Brain. The creature turned, holding the mask in its long, gnarled hand, and strode toward the nearest crevice out of sight.
What was that?
Brain squeezed out, swallowing hard.
I don't know.
Elaine stretched out, continuing to wipe away the tears.
But it appears to be one of the inhabitants of these lands, or a servant of some crazy cult.
Why don't we go the other way?
Brain suggested, with the apparent hope of a yes answer. I just grimaced. Yeah, to leave so that we can get kicked in the neck for failing to complete a task. They'll say, oh, the great mage freak chickened out. Great reputation, damn it. Elaine nodded sorrowfully, and we moved on, moving deeper into the wild, rocky expanse. After about 20 minutes, we came upon a prominent reddish boulder. Someone had managed to leave an intricate inscription and an arrow pointing down into the canyon. We should have passed it if we wanted to go to the cracked earth. As we approached, Brain froze, as if someone had hit him. The stone was inscribed with something like, "Do you remember how she loved you and then left you? She was the only one. She gave you happiness, but she left you for someone else. She died carrying his baby." I saw Brain's lips curl into a thin line, and he squeezed out,
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna put my past on display here too, aren't I?
He looked at us grimly.
It's about my ex-lover. I thought I was past that. Apparently not.
We followed the arrow and almost immediately came upon a steep cliff, near which stood gallows. It was old and shriveled, but there was something swinging on it. As I got closer, I realized that there was a woman's corpse hanging there. For a moment I felt uneasy. With all this mess, I expected her to talk, and she did, as luck would have it.
Brain!
Came a slightly husky voice.
Stay away from me. I don't forgive you, and I didn't love you then. I only loved him.
Brain bit his lip, trying to keep himself in check, but he spoke up none the less.
What was my fault? I was willing to give my life for you.
The woman on the gallows twitched, as if she had crunched her neck, and hissed.
That's the thing? You forgot yourself in me. I needed you to remain a person, not an appendage, and you went out of your way to do me favors. It's pathetic, Brian.
I could feel the atmosphere heating up. Brian shrieked.
And you left me for a man who didn't care about you at all.
Alas,
The corpse wheezed angrily.
he gave me passion, and all you gave me was your own emptiness.
There was a heavy silence. I didn't know where to go. Alan looked away without a word. Then the body on the rope lifted its hand and pointed away, further down the rocky valley.
Go out there. Look for what you want. But remember, Brain, even now, I don't love you.
Then, a black blob of energy slipped out of her as it had out of my parents before. The corpse twitched a couple of times and seemed to crumple even more, as if released from something. Elaine grimaced.
Someone once said, only the grave can mend a man. And it seems that the grave also multiplies resentments. They are sitting here with old grievances in their bones.
We moved on. Brain walked like a ghost, tormented by his memories. I walked beside him, realizing that I couldn't help him. I had enough of my own cockroaches, and yet, how these lands love to pour out guilt and pain on us. The sun hit again, replaced in an instant by a scarlet moon. We were just turning around another cliff when I caught a glimpse of another bulky figure in a sandy robe, carefully removing the girl's body from the noose, lifting her skinny limbs with ease. It didn't have multiple faces, it had one. It looks like a mummy somewhere in the Catalan pyramids. The creature, without turning to us, dragged the dead woman off into the distance. It seemed to collect such prodigal, dead-like trophies or ingredients for something. I had a terrible thought. Wouldn't it drag me into its collection if I died here? Finally, after another ascent between the rocks, we saw something ahead that we were after. The cracked earth. It was hard not to recognize this place, a huge broken ground surrounded by rock. There was a gaping hole in the middle of it, and a twisted staircase spiraled downward. Clearly not carved by humans. A shimmering haze rose from below, as if a magical cauldron were boiling somewhere. "We're here," I said hoarsely, my chest clenched with the premonition that the real hell was waiting for us underground. Brain and Alan stepped silently to the cliff, watching the spiral staircase descend. There was a distinct odor of sulfur and something else stale in the air. as if there were thousands of decomposing bodies down there.
Looks like it's too late to go back.
Elaine muttered.
No one will praise us if we run away from here.
Yes,
Brian muttered, glancing at the rings on his hand, which glowed with a faint, unsettling light.
there are no illusions here, but there seem to be a lot of spirits.
I also figured that I should get out of here while I still could, but if I came back, and with such a collection of mental traumas, I think they'd have me suspended from magic in the Lahir library and make me wash dishes, or worse, put me in a mental institution, which means I'll have to go down to a place where even my ugliness will look like a sweet misunderstanding compared to what lies beneath these lands. Well, Mr. Witnesses, I said with a sneer, trying to look more cheerful than I felt, ready to dive into another pit and meet a couple dozen more ghosts of the past. Maybe this time I'll dream about my friends from the orphanage.
Don't make a mystery.
Alan answered, staring gloomily at the steam streaming from the cracks in the ground. We took a step forward. I felt a sudden throbbing in my head, like a warning, but it was too late to retreat. I was not such a wimp that I could stop right on the doorstep, and my parents had already made it clear that you can go back to the end of the world. You can't hide from your shadow anywhere. Cursing my fate and clutching the jar of pills in my pocket, I was the first to step onto the ancient stone steps leading down into the cracked earth. Alan and Brain followed me, breathing hard. And so, reluctantly and fearfully, we went on toward what awaited us down there among the ghosts and giant creatures. We must find answers for the library, or lose ourselves completely and turn into just another restless dead of this nightmarish wasteland. I'll be honest, I don't know what it is that drives me more: fear, despair, or the miserable hope of someday fixing my face. Probably a little of both, and a little of both. But hell, it seems that in this cursed place, all people's fears become reality, and all we have to do is walk through them, writhing like a crooked mirror that reflects our sins and tears. And if there's something worse than my own mother with a knife waiting for me down there, then, well, I've long been ready to experience what it's like to be torn apart by my own nightmares. At least, I won't have to worry about someone shouting ugly at me in this place. The air itself seems to be imbued with an ugliness far more profound. We're going down, and this is just the beginning of another round of madness. We walked down a steep, twisted staircase that went lower and lower into the cracked earth. The peeling brick walls were lit by torches. Between the torches, dozens of skulls glowed alarmingly white in niches. Clearly not a museum exhibit, but something more sinister. The air was getting heavier and heavier, and at every turn of the stairs, I felt as if I was stepping into the depths of the sea. Lack of oxygen, cramped. Elaine and Brain are my two witness companions, walked silently by my side. Looking around, I tried to keep my eyes open, but part of me wanted to fall into unconsciousness as soon as possible, just so I wouldn't have to see all these nightmares.
Guys, check it out.
Elaine suddenly said, pointing to a darkening opening in the wall. It turned out that a huge mirror was sticking out of the wall. You can't understand how or why. It seemed funny at first. Why would someone leave a crooked mirror in such a creepy dungeon? Alan and Brain must have thought the same thing. They came closer and laughed, pointing their fingers at their reflected faces. The mirror was distorting everything, making his nose elongated and his eyes slanted. I snorted in disgust and stood a little behind them. I was ugly enough without mirrors, but in the end, curiosity got the better of me, and I took a step forward to look at myself, too. And then, it was like something inside me burst. I saw a reflection that was an even uglier version of my face, cheeks scarred with blood, and I shifted almost to the temple, scars bumping, and a mouth crooked to reveal half-rotten teeth. It was as if the mirror itself wanted to say, "Buddy, you thought you couldn't get any uglier. Here's an improved version of me." "No, no, no," I mumbled. "What the hell?" Elaine and Brain stopped laughing and watched in bewilderment as I started to shake. I felt my stomach clench into a tight knot. The hatred for that ugly face flared up in me, and I started yelling, "What kind of freak is that? I don't want to see that monster. I hate it." I grabbed the dagger from my belt and attacked the mirror, trying to shatter it. The sound of shards hitting the floor, and I'm still pounding and screaming with all my might, not noticing the glass cutting my hands. And then the memory of my parents flashed through my mind, the way they looked at my face, the contempt in their eyes. My mother wanted to kill me. My father didn't stop her. It was the same way they despised my ugliness, the same way they didn't want to see me. It was like a thought that blew my mind. My mind jumbled, and I started mumbling, choking on my own words. I didn't know who I hated more, myself, my parents, or life itself. Everything I'd been trying to accomplish was now turning into a sneer. And then the mirror came to life. I realized with horror that the mirror wasn't just some object embedded in the wall. A large silhouette in a blue robe began to emerge from the masonry with a smooth, mirrored surface instead of a face. The splinters on the floor seemed to have already recovered on the creature's head.
What the...
Brain could only squeeze the hilt of his sword. The creature didn't make a sound, but one look at that mirrored face was enough to push me to the brink of insanity. It still reflected my ugliness, only now it was mocking me. I didn't have the strength to scream or run. I felt hysterical, and I choked on it. I stumbled, just from the madness from the shaking in my body. My legs gave out and I went flying into the stairwell. Elaine screamed,
Damn it! Hold on.
But the creature in the blue robe swung his hand and pushed him and Brain down with me. We all tumbled down into a monstrous black pit. I flew, realizing that I was probably going to crash, and maybe was for the best. Death had been breathing down my neck for a long time anyway. It should have been a couple seconds before hitting the rocks, but somehow we flew and flew and flew for what seemed like an eternity. I was about to think I was dying when suddenly I found myself on the flat floor. No sound of impact, no splash of blood, just a ringing in my ears.
Are you alive?
Alan wheezed from somewhere nearby. I coughed. I guess, yeah. I looked around and it was pitch black. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor, just as if illuminated by a ghostly light. I felt a hard surface beneath me with my hands, but it was inaccessible to my eyes.
Some kind of black nothingness.
Brain said quietly. We stood up, trying not to look at each other. We each had our own insanities. I shuddered at the memory of the mirror, but tried not to howl in terror again. The main thing is to get out alive, if at all possible. As we walked forward, we saw a red dot in the distance. It shimmered, drawing us in as if it were Thean. Evidence that there was anything here but emptiness. Whether it was a door of salvation or another trap was hard to say, but we made a daring dash for it. It seemed like an eternity, but the point was still not approaching. My legs were buzzing, my heart was pounding, but eventually we got closer and realized with horror that it was a creature in a red robe with several faces that we had seen before. Huge, creepy, with multiple faces on the head, chest, and indeed all over the figure.
Let's run back.
Alan shouted. But no matter where we went, it was like space was closing in, and we were still closer to the thing. Soon she herself approached us and spoke in chorus, male, female, children's, and elderly voices sounded in unison.
You have discovered forgotten memories. We too are forgotten memories, but we want to bring back what someone forgot. Not your master magician, it doesn't matter. Sooner or later, your information will reach the right figure. We're reclaiming the forgotten. You remember the pain you buried, and the universe is also a huge mind. It forgets many things. We restore them.
I swallowed the lump in my throat. The images made my brain boil. Some global force holding all the memories, and we, poor people, are just their puppets. The creature extended a long arm and pointed behind us. We turned around and saw a flash of light, like a way out of the darkness.
Let's go.
Brain shouted with a shriek. We sprinted madly toward that light. This time, the distance was closing fast. I could feel the wild wind whipping my face. Suddenly, a white veil flashed, and we jumped over it and collapsed onto a hard, rocky surface. My knees banged unpleasantly, and I looked around. The darkness was gone. We found ourselves at the exit of the cave, with a rocky floor beneath our feet. Was it daylight or night light? It's hard to tell. Something changes in the sky all the time, but right now, it was like dusk. As I approached the edge, I froze. At the bottom, about 20 meters away, we could see the same cracked earth with its twisted staircase that we had used to descend. We were higher now, though we remembered distinctly how we had fallen down somewhere.
How could you do that?
Elaine howled and even grabbed his head.
We were going down deep, and we found ourselves on the upper level.
Look, don't rack your brain, I muttered. This damn your unfouled distort space-time consciousness. Everything in the world. We wanted to go back to the portal, which the mages were going to keep open after the mission. Maybe that would save us. But when we finally arrived at the place where the portal had been set up, another bummer awaited us. The rune circle was extinguished, and no sign of magical energy remained. Exhale, Brian.
The end. It's half a lifetime's walk from here to Bertalia, if not more, and how many enemies you'll have to avoid.
They wouldn't believe us if we told them what happened.
Elaine added grimly. I was so devastated, honestly, that I didn't even feel angry. Powerlessness, that's what filled me. But we decided to at least try, even if there are paths through a dozen countries, but sitting in one place is also stupid. So we walked, for a long time, through rocky gorges across parched plains. We were running out of water, food, too. We were gradually losing our will. Our legs were shaking. I was beginning to think, why don't we just lie down and die of thirst? When this thought became particularly clear, something as crazy as the rest of our story happened. Half rotten hands came out of the sand, grabbed us, and started pulling us down. I would have fought before, but I had no strength. I and my companions resisted sluggishly, but without much success. We fell under that sand, and suddenly we came to the shores of Vertalia. With a crash, a sea was close by, familiar towers in the distance, and the air was different, warm, though soaked with salt. We were beaten, exhausted and torn. We had no desire to go to the Lahir library. What's the point? Interrogations, reports, and even accusations of insanity, not to mention personal tragedies, would be waiting for us there.
I'm going to a brothel.
Brain threw down, not even trying to justify himself.
Let at least the caress of another man's hands and wine take away a little of the memories of that girl who betrayed me in life and didn't forgive me after death.
Elaine frowned grimly.
I have to go to the guardhouse. Confess that I killed my brother. I can't keep running from my past.
I nodded, not knowing what to say. Everyone has their own way. I don't seem to want to go anywhere.